someone to think about us. We all need someone to think about us. Somebody sang for me, had me on their mind, took the time and sang for me. I'm so glad they sang. I'm so glad they sang. I'm so glad they sang for me. Maybe it's you that needs this. Maybe it's the one you love. It's the folks that we brought up in the transitions. It's the folks in the flame of that candle that we're thinking of. Just think about them and sing about them this week. Somebody sang for me, had me on their mind, took the time and sang for me. I'm so glad they sang. I'm so glad they sang. I'm so glad they sang for me.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's so good to see everybody in the house today.
Yes, it is.
You all look good. Yes. Almost as good as I look. No, you look so much better. As ministers, we have the unique privilege to be present with and to attend to people who are hurting. The pain may be physical, emotional, or both. While the source of pain may be anything, the emotional pain we experience in life often comes from our relationships with others. There have been times when I was in counseling sessions with couples when one or both at some point would say something to the effect of, I want to be able to speak my mind and to tell them how I feel. Conflicted and devitalized couples may express feelings of being inadequate, feeling hopeless, vilified, unappreciated, disrespected, unheard, unwanted, and worst of all, unloved. When couples come to me, I quietly assess the state of their union by asking some direct questions and sometimes some indirect questions. But overall, what I am seeking to learn is whether both of them have the desire to work towards saving the relationship. Usually before I can get to the conflict resolution stage, I will use a mirroring technique that implores one partner to restate in their own words what they just heard the first partner say. I'll then ask the first partner if what the second partner restated was accurate. If not, we continue going on and until we arrive to the point where the first partner says, okay, you got it. We all know that good, productive conversation or communication is essential to the overall success of any kind of relationship. Once I ascertain that both of them have the desire to work on the relationship, we then can proceed toward conflict resolution and healing of the divide, what divides the relationship. So when I work with couples, I might ask them to bring their vows to them with the session. And some of them are like, what? I ain't read my vows in ages, so a lot of them don't remember those. But if they can find them, I say bring them. Now, most couples have some type of arrangement. As we go through the vows, couples are reminded of the promises they made to each other. And on occasion, we'll run across that old familiar line, till death do us part. It kind of stands out a little bit when they're talking about conflict. But why would I want to see the vows? What I really want is them to see and assess for themselves if they are on course or have ventured away from the promises that they had made to each other. You see, I believe our lives are interwoven with the lives of other people, and we're all on a journey, which means we're all in transition. And where there is change and transition, we should anticipate conflict. It's going to show up, right? Our communication and conflict resolution skills often determine success in both our personal and our professional relationships and in our private and public lives. This month, our congregation is discussing the theme of covenant. So you probably hear a lot about covenant this month. This community's covenant involves, and you heard it a little bit earlier, you maybe said it, dwelling together in peace and helping one another. But we also have other social contracts, agreements, written, spoken, or implied. And so it is with this country and with every American. So when we talk about our national union, we have to look at the state of the political discourse in our country. We just had an election, right? And a lot of us are feeling all kinds of ways about that election. So we can accurately assess that our communication hasn't been all that productive as of late. I'm sensing a lot of anger coming from all political sides or political directions, and I get the sense that perhaps folks are not feeling heard, valued, or validated. I'm sensing that they have something to say about how they're feeling, and they want us to hear it. Although it would be an oversimplification to compare these United States and several 100 million people living in them to a personal marital relationship, but some parallels could be drawn nevertheless. So I'm here today to tell you that we Americans are in need of some deep therapeutic relationship counseling. And of course, I want you to bring with you to your session a copy of the Constitution and any other founding document that shows forth the promises that we must make to each other and to this land. Because that is our vow. That is our guiding document. Not only do people get counseling to help to learn skills for effective communication and conflict resolution, but some desire also to go deeper into core values and, in other cases, to figure out if the relationship is still viable, if the union can be healed. As people and relationships change, partners will sometimes grieve aspects of the relationship, aspects that have changed over time and that are no longer the same. I've often heard it said, my partner is not the same person I entered in a relationship with. I know y'all felt that one. If you didn't, I did. I just told him that yesterday. Likewise, many of us are grieving the loss of what we consider our national identity. The image of America is turning out to be something we don't fully recognize, or we no longer recognize. Some of us have lost faith in democracy itself and to some degree in humanity. I've been raised in fundamentalism. Having been raised in fundamentalism, as some of you were, I know well what this feels like. It's not unlike a crisis of faith. What we have been told about God and religion could no longer be reconciled with our growing understanding of reality, leading to theological and ontological deconstruction and the subsequent reconstruction and reimagining. See, I believe that what many of us are now experiencing as a shock to our system is a crisis of democracy. Many of us woke up and realized that we were not the people we thought we were. And that happened around the year 2016. That is for many progressives, not necessarily for conservatives. once we realize that over time that we and our relationship has changed, we can either embrace the change as an opportunity to get to know the new aspects of our partner, or we can stay locked in dissonance. Likewise, we can grieve our democracy, or as with the crisis of faith, we can reconstruct our understanding of it. I'll say that again. We can grieve our democracy, or as with a crisis of faith, we can reconstruct our understanding of it. We can decide what our democracy will be. And in doing so, discover new ways of restoring confidence in our nation and in our fellow Americans, and possibly ourselves. Now, I consider myself a progressive, as you might gather, but for many years I was conservative. I voted conservative. I understood both sides, and I still understand both sides really well. But for a few years now, I have been hearing public pundits claim that conservatives are really angry about the direction of the country. Now, I have never fully understood the source of that supposed anger. I've wondered aloud if such anger is directed at people like me, perhaps because of who I am, who I love, and what I stand for, my political or religious affiliation and worldview. Now, personally, I disagree with conservatives on a whole new slew of issues, but I don't view them as an enemy, as my enemy. In fact, as a chaplain and member of the clergy, we're responsible, and we've ministered to people of many political persuasions and faith traditions. But for some time now, I've been longing to speak with a diehard conservative. I said, I've been longing to speak to a real diehard conservative on several topics. This is personally, not as a minister, Marley, okay? He's like, Randy, let's talk. I realized that I have stayed in the safety of my bubble for all these years. And as a black gay man, I'm telling you this, that there's some, I love being affirmed in this community. There is safety in this community, but I've been in a bubble. And I recognize that. Now, while it is a good place for me, it has not been the best place for us. But I have not rubbed elbows with any conservatives and who would openly share their political perspectives. And I also wonder if there is sometimes a chilling effect amongst our congregations, where conservatives do not feel welcome to share their perspectives or feel that their opinions would not matter if they did. But of course, this is a topic for another day and another conversation. Reverend Barbara Prose, who is doing the work with Braver Angels, an organization that is bridging conservatives and progressives together in efforts to understand our differences, to find common ground where it exists, and to help the country we all love to find a better way. So in preparation for this sermon, I reached out to Barbara and I said, can you connect me with someone in this organization who is diehard conservative? I had several questions, and I was quickly able to find, she hooked me up, and I called this person. We scheduled time on the phone. My goal was to ask the questions that have been on my mind for a long time, but also to suspend my internal narration, to hold back any factual, intellectual, or moral objections, and simply just be there and listen. After a quick introduction, my first question I asked, what is the source of all the anger in your party? This is how they responded. There's been 7 decades of culture wars, and the civil rights movement was an element of it. The country has been changing from its traditional values for over 70 years. That's 70 years of change that conservatives don't understand or accept. And as a result, they feel that the country has been in decline. Furthermore, conservatives are upset because of the fundamental unfairness in the press. There's unfair treatment in the telling of the narratives. They feel that the media is skewed against them. Everyone wants to talk about what happened on January 6th, but we don't talk about the violence that erupted on our streets a year or so prior. The police, the government, and the media treated those protesters differently and handled them with kid gloves. Was afraid of offending them. Now, as I listened, there was a couple of times when I wanted to interject, to respond, but I didn't. After the meeting, my partner asked what we had talked about, and upon telling him, he immediately uttered what I had refused to. What about the black folks and 400 years of oppression? What about the LGBT community who have no voice? What about the indigenous folk? I said, hey, stop. I stopped him because that was not the task. That was not our task at that junction. This conversation was not about confronting their beliefs or cognitive conclusions. During the interview, I would go on and ask this person about CRT, that's critical race theory, the banning of books, and several other questions. But I finally got around to asking the questions that I really wanted to know the answers to. And these were questions connected to relationship. I asked, what do you want for yourself and your family? And their response is to be safe, healthy, and to spend time together with my family and to live a prosperous life with having my basic needs met. Next question. What do you want from me? Now, I gave him a disclaimer. I said, I want you to answer not as a person who's been doing this work, but as an average conservative, knowing that I am a progressive black gay minister, and in light of your conservative values. And there was a brief silence. Then he said, I want you to experience life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I really want you to be able to pursue all of your dreams. I accepted that. And finally, I asked, what do you want for this country? He said, I want everyone to live in peace. I want to see racial unity. I want to see see us unified as a country. I want people to see us, the U.S., as a good country. You see, these words coming from this conservative really sounded good to me because it's not what we've been hearing, not what I have been hearing. And those words were healing. We shared the same core values, the same core desires. And I wanted the same thing for him. I wanted that for myself, and I wanted it for our country. Now, I know as we go deeper, the issues will become more nuanced and more challenging. But I observed something about myself in that moment. First, I began to really like this guy. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation and to us getting to know each other better. For me, one of the most important things that came from this interaction was my taking the step to suspend commentary, to suspend interpretation, and to suspend evaluation of what was being said, suppressing the propensity to prepare a response. You know how we are. Our partner's talking, and we're already ready, and I'm going to let you have it. But just sitting with the empty space, sitting with what was being communicated. For some, this may be a difficult practice. Now, I've had a little work doing it, so it's a little easier for me. We can learn to minimize our differences as we explore more of our commonalities. And there, we are certain to find the places we can agree upon, especially when we bring our best neutral selves to each and every moment. Now, we're going to start this dialogue today, right here in this room between 4 and 5. The All Souls Action Team is inviting us to a congregational conversation. We'll be sharing our stories and listening to each other in an effort to reconnect and to build an even stronger All Souls community. Now, thinking about my interview with the conservative, I realized that people who feel what they feel, that people will feel what they feel, and I can't control that. It doesn't matter if what they feel is based on reason, empathy, or even rational. You cannot tell people that what they feel is wrong. It doesn't work. We already know that because I'm telling somebody this wrong this morning, and they told me something else. But what people feel is very close to their identity, to their beliefs, and a rejection of what they feel for them may feel like a rejection of who they are as individuals. And to bring up the whatabouts, as my partner did. He's back to y'all. He's like, I'm going to get you, Randy. To bring about the whatabouts would invalidate what the speaker is trying to communicate and polarize the dialogue. This is what we've been seeing in our nation. We must learn how to listen without commentary and then sit and meditate on what we heard. This is the tending that we must do for one another. If our fellow human being is suffering, we must attend to that. If our nation is suffering, and oh boy, it is, we must attend to that. This moment calls for pause and for setting aside our narratives, interpretations, and our evaluations, for a moment to attend to what this nation is calling us to attend to. And it requires first that we listen. Being able to listen without commentary is of itself an act of compassion. This is one of the ways we can love beyond belief. This is how we exercise a love beyond belief. Let us just shut up and listen. I used to believe that we have only a limited capacity for love, and I preached that here a few months ago. Boy, have I grown. And that we needed to protect our love from being depleted. You know, once you've been abused and misused and taken granted of, people can become a little battle hardened when it comes and resistant to loving others and even resisting being loved by others. I realize that not all relationships can be recovered or healed, nor that we must seek reconciliation even with an abuser. Now, Marlon said last week that we should find ways that we can be in relationship with those who are difficult. He didn't tell us to lay down for someone who's dangerous or who would seek to harm us. And I'm aware that not everyone will want to be in relationship or do this work with us. Sometimes people have already checked out of the relationship, and there's people in our country who's already checked out of this American experiment. So what do you do for them? How do you move on from them? Well, I say keep your heart open, keep your hands outstretched. But if you have to, listen to what Paul Simon said. Slip out the back, Jack. Make a little plan, Stan. Don't need to be coy, Roy. Just listen to me. Get on the bus, Gus. Don't have to discuss. Y'all heard what I'm saying. But we have an opportunity to stay in relationship with folk. And when the sages of old encouraged us to love our neighbors as we would love ourselves, they perhaps knew something about the human spirit that perhaps we are missing today. Erich Fromm, a social psychologist and humanistic philosopher, taught that love is an art that we can learn to master. He spoke of productive love. He wrote, quote, productive love always implies a syndrome of attitudes, that of care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. If I love, I care. That is, I am actively concerned with the other person's growth and happiness. I am not a spectator. And even as feelings go, we don't have to feel compassion in order to show compassion. We must allow our hearts to become, mustn't allow our hearts to become so hardened that we would rather choose separation over relationship and community. Sometimes it's easy to claim that love is all we need. And true, I do believe that love is the answer to much of what ails us. However, I feel that we must go deeper in love. Love requires us to take risks. It calls us to a place of vulnerability again and again. Love is a unique trust placed in chance, said French philosopher Alain Badiou. When we say love beyond belief, and you hear it all the time here, we as the congregation declare love's preeminence in our relationships over and beyond our differences. So I'd like to end with the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, quote, "Along the way of life, someone must have sense enough and morality enough to cut off the chain of hate. This can only be done by projecting the ethic of love to the center of our lives," end quote. May our courageous conversations lead us to a real and genuine courageous love. May we always choose that love. And may we always build bridges between our divisions. If I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? And friends, all of our voices and all of our visions, we certainly can make sweet harmony.